Hey guys, how's it going? Happy Tuesday. It is the girls over at Flourish Collective just popping in again on another Tuesday afternoon to bring you guys more information on life and things and topics. And this week we're continuing our series on relationships. And the funny thing is, if you guys you want a little behind the scenes BTS look, these girls have no idea what we're going to talk about before they sit in the seats.
And we asked you, and I noticed a couple of us asked you, and you still didn't tell us.
I didn't. I sang the song.
Well,
yes,
she
did.
I kind of. You don't even know the talent.
She diverts it for your
details.
Yeah. So I don't tell them because I feel like if it's on the fly, it's real, authentic.
And it fits you perfect.
And it fits me perfect because I can just make it up as we go.
And nobody knows.
Nobody knows. So there's no pressure.
Jesus knows. That's all he needs.
Well, it's between Jesus and I, and that's it. His lips are sealed. So I'm going to take a second. If you are just popping in, share this out with your friends. We're going to have a great conversation, and we're going to try and keep it as short as possible. Apparently, our going rate is 37 minutes.
Okay.
So grab a drink. We have our little, but we're not going to tell you what's in our cups.
Oh, kidding.
Surprise.
Our surprise, yeah. So we have our drink. If you guys want to take a second to grab a drink and just join us for a hot second, maybe 37 minutes, you can go ahead and do that. I'm just going to share this out with my other peeps that I told them about. So I want everybody to be able to come into this conversation and ask questions and tell us. We're discussing a series for the month of February on relationships. And last week we discussed the most important relationship, and it's your relationship with Jesus and your faith and where you are in that area of your life. And we kind of gave you guys some little tips and tricks and pointers that you can start implementing in your life right now if that is one of the relationships you feel needs to flourish. And as you know, flourishing is just really looking at your environment, and your environment can be many things. Your environment can be, one of your environments can be your relationships. And if that environment in your life isn't where you want it to be, and you work on getting it to where you want it to be, your life will transform. So I just want to encourage you guys to watch last week's video if you kind of are new to us, and just kind of marinate on the topic and see where you are. And we'd love to hear from you where you are in that relationship and how we can help empower you to work on that one. So today we're going to talk about another kind of relationship, and it's that love relationship, and that's more of a personal love. So we'll discuss three out of the, most of us are married here. How do I say that without being
I'm unmarried.
Almost unmarried.
Almost.
How are we going to call that? Because I don't want it to be awkward, because I want you to bring your perspective of this. So how long have you been married, Erin?
14, coming up on 14.
14 years. Okay.
I usually get that wrong.
I'm
the worst
okay.
with dates.
Isn't
I do it with my girls' birthdays. I'm just keeping it real. It's so true.
I don't even know my
Matt
kids'
keeps
birthdays.
everything. He knows it all, so
He's
I
the
don't
one.
have to.
That's
We're going to
good,
go with
though.
14.
That's
Okay,
good.
14 is a good
14.
number.
14 is a good number. I
number.
like it. I like it. So I celebrated my 12th anniversary, which, by the way, is like 70 years celebrity years. So just
You're doing
FYI.
good.
I'm doing
You're
so
doing
good.
good.
I'm really. I look really good for 70 years married. Not gonna lie. But 12 years, and I'm not gonna lie. For a really long time, I was always like I would do like 5-year intervals. Like, we did it, 5 years, babe. High five. And I was like, okay, if we do it another 5 years, we're like good. So we still have another 3 years to like celebrate that 5-year win.
The big one.
Yeah. So, but dang it, marriage is hard. Okay, so how long have you said this last week, but it's a long time. I remember
It is
that.
a long time. 36 and a half. So this year it'll be 37.
Wow.
Goodness.
Yeah, I know.
Wow, that is that. I know.
Okay, see, yes, you could be my daughter.
I could.
If you were, if it was one of those weddings.
Yeah, if you did it right, like right after.
That's really
Yeah,
funny.
about those.
Wow, that's really funny. Well, Kaiya is 11. I've been married, 12 years, and I got pregnant pregnant literally like 3 months after we got married. I don't know, May, whatever that, 3 months. And my mom was like, girl, you almost ruined your reputation. Because it was like right after. So I'm so glad people can do math, and she's 11 now. Anyways, Nene, let's talk about you. Where you at? What you doing? What's your thing? What's your sign? What do you like to do on weekends?
Hang out with the
Let it
kids.
out.
Yes. No. Okay, so you're transitioning. You're in a
Go ahead, ask
transition.
some questions.
You're going through a transition period, and I think it's really important to discuss where you're at right now, because ultimately this is a form of Christian women. And if we're going to bring our strong beliefs and our faith into this conversation, I think it's great to kind of hear it from your point of view, because you were raised in a Christian household with very big Christian beliefs. And the norm, like my perspective of what you're going through is totally maybe not like how I'm supposed to think about it in many ways. But I love the way you've gone about this journey, because we met right as it was happening. When you started working with me, it was when it was the beginning. So I want to hear your perspective on that. And I'm just going to, I want to first discuss, for the people that are watching this, that are in a relationship, and it doesn't necessarily need to be marriage, but you discussed last week how when you're a Christian, and you're really into your faith, and that's your values and your beliefs, relationships look differently. And you don't necessarily have the same time frame as maybe a secular relationship or a traditional relationship, or whatever you want to call it. Things look a little differently when you are on that playing field, and when your faith is really strong to you. And is that like a rush thing? Like, because I have to do the right thing at the right time, and I'm supposed to save myself for marriage, and I'm supposed to do all these things. Is that why Christians do things the way that we do things the way that we do? Well, I'm not going to include myself in that, because I didn't necessarily do any of that in that order. But my kids are going to think that. Right. So that's a different story. But how does it look? What is the way to do it? And how does it look after you're going through a transition? Like, I want to hear your guys' perspective, because I want to know, and I want people to know that are out there, maybe they are Christians, or they're new Christians, and they want to do the right thing. And maybe they've gone through a divorce, maybe they're going through a divorce, maybe they haven't been married, but they want to do things in the right order, and they want to stay true to their faith. So what is the protocol? What do you, I want to hear your guys' advice to the women out there that are watching this and want a little guidance as to that, kind of like that blank space.
Yeah.
Who wants to go first?
Okay. I'll
You guys have
share.
Go for it.
Well, I guess I'll start with part of my story. And, I was raised in the church, but from 12 to 21, I lived a life of drug and alcohol addiction. And for anyone that has been there and knows about that, that's not like I'm going to choose to do drugs today. That is a lifestyle. And that lifestyle opens its door up to every kind of darkness that there is. So that was my life. And I was in trouble with the law, DUI, suicide attempts, mental institutions. I mean, truly, if God can change my life, he can change anyone's life. And I tell people, if there's someone that they're believing for, who they're desiring their life to be changed, if they're still breathing, there's hope.
Yes,
there is hope for them. So I was very promiscuous. Relationships to me were just physical, and usually it involved drugs and alcohol, and it was just a way to fix me. I mean, it's like that children's toy where, you have like a circle, and then you're trying to get the square in the circle. Yeah. So I'm looking for love in all the wrong places, trying to get that square in that circle. So when I went to rehab, which was 16 years ago, I fully surrendered, and I said, God, who I am going in is not who I want to be when I leave. And I had this encounter with Jesus, and truly that night, when I woke up the next morning, I just had this peace. And I knew for the first time in my life that I was going to be okay. And I was someone that was always scared to be in my own skin. And I remember coming out of my room, and people were like, your countenance is different. And I looked in the mirror, and sure enough, like my eyes were light. I mean, it was a radical transformation. And I tasted and saw the Lord was good, and it just sent me on this amazing journey with him. I haven't looked back. But so I thought, okay, you're living for Jesus and you get in these Christian relationships and you decide not to have sex until you're married and it's just going to be easy. And I had no idea how hard it is, how much the temptation was there. And what Matt and I did was like, we got accountability because I wanted to do it right. I wanted to do it different. It wasn't because like, this is how you have to do it. It's because I tasted the way that the world says you do it and the way I thought you're supposed to do it, and it led to pain, and it led to destruction and depression and distrust and everything bad. And so as I began to live for God, I was like, I'm going to try all things new. I'm going to test the word. I'm going to do what the Bible says. This body is not mine. I am to keep it pure. And so, yeah, we didn't have sex before marriage, but we pushed the line more than we would have liked to, more than I hope my daughters don't do that, but we instantly got accountability. Because I felt like God was saying, if you keep doing this, I will take him away from you. And on our wedding night, it was beautiful and it was pure. And I remember wanting to like go knock on everyone's hotel room and be like, this is why you wait for marriage. It was like the heavens open, like it was this glorious thing. But we're getting real, right?
We're Facebook Live when we needed it.
Yes.
16 years ago. Not like that, but like you could have announced it.
Not like that.
Not
like that.
Oh yeah, that's not
We can say
live.
like
The afterglow.
you could have talked about it.
Yeah.
So shared the app. Yeah.
Calm down, Nene. It's not like that.
It's not like that.
Super PG-13.
Awesome.
Inspiration.
Perfect. PG.
Yeah.
Just do PG.
Yeah.
Don't
Okay.
do 13. That's really pushing it too.
Little art. But the point being, yes, so that has been just amazing because I've experienced both.
Right.
And so I've experienced the redemption that, where the Bible says, like, the old is gone, the new is here. I just began to cling to that in my journey. And I'm like, the old Aaron is gone, and the new creation in Christ is here. And so I wanted that in my marriage. And then, I mean, you, of course, like, the expectations, you can take the conversation to a whole nother place.
Right.
But as far as, like, the
Absolutely.
purity
Right.
and wanting to do it that way, that was my story. And that's my prayer for my girls and for women and girls that I'm in contact with, that you want to save that for the one that God has for you.
So for a person that, let's say, is trying this out for the second time around, what is one piece of advice that you can give them to kind of, you said a lot of great things, but one thing that they can stand on and say, okay, now they're in a point in their lives where they're not with their husbands, they're in a divorce. They might be kind of on the cusp of being ready to find something more or something else or someone else, but they want to stay true to their ideals and their faith. What is one thing you can give them besides, you've already done it, do it differently, because they've already lived life with a husband, So what is it that you can advise them to do right now in their season where they can look at what the expectation is? Maybe they're older, maybe they're in like a 50-year-old phase of their life, and how they can walk the walk and talk the talk. That's not give it into temptation, but it's more tangible.
I think it all goes back to accountability. I really do. I think no matter how old we get, we're always going to need that.
Right.
I think like growing their personal faith. I mean, I feel like the more that our eyes stay on Jesus, especially when it comes to like a relationship, that person, you can't help but intersect, whether you're, 18, 30, 50, whatever that is. And so like enjoying that season when you are by yourself to continue to become who you want to be and trusting that God will bring it. And then when it does happen, if you want it to be different, then you find a mentor, you find someone to say, hey, check me on this, hold me accountable on this. And you get around like-minded people.
Right.
And like-minded couples.
Find a buddy.
That's good.
Also, just waiting. Waiting is important, even though you're older or whatever the situation is just trying to hear God's voice clearly, because now it is another time around. You did trust that person, that whatever the situation, the marriage, whatever whatever happened, it let you down. So now you have to look at it differently and wonder, well, can I ever trust another person? Can I allow my children or my life to involve this person? And, you know, the thing is, you meet people in church or wherever you do meet people to get married, you do trust them and you look at their walk. But sometimes things happen, and that's the other thing too, is this can happen to anybody.
Yes.
Yes.
It can happen to anybody. So that's obviously so prevalent. And I just think if you stay in the Word of God and making Him first in your life again, it will be a much easier road to go through. I mean, if you're doing this by yourself and you're doing it without God, I can't imagine how hard it would be. So that's just my advice. It's stay connected with your friends and your family, have them check you. And I mean, that's the best you can do, I think, in the situation. How else?
Do you feel it's important to surround yourself with the right people?
Yes.
Because one of the things I told Dan and I were talking over dinner yesterday as we were celebrating 12 years, like, I mean, I think about how honestly, when I say, like, God knew exactly the person I needed to be with, it's like, because you can never realize your life looking forward. It's when you connect those dots backwards that you're like, oh my gosh, like my relationship with Dan honestly should have never happened, like ever. He lived in New Jersey, I lived in California. First of all, like the odds are against us there. We had 3,000 miles between us. And even when we were dating, it was so hard. And you know, we were both so young, and I was so young, and I was so stupid and naive, and, you know, and at the time I was focused on just my career. So honestly, like, I had this conversation with Kaiya on the drive to school, and I'm like, Kaiya, like, you shouldn't be here if we thought of the odds, you know, like, our relationship should have never happened. But, you know, now that we got through the 3,000 miles, I ended up in New Jersey, we got married, even those first couple years, it's so crazy how every single season and stage in a relationship shifts everything. So people have this assumption like, okay, so we're going to live together, or we're going to get married, let's talk about it the way it's supposed to be. Everything's going to be perfect. It's not. Like, every single season changes the dynamic. Now you have to get used to living with someone. How are they going to live? And all that. Like, things that people don't necessarily talk about, but it's hard. Like, all those phases are hard. And if your foundation, I don't even know how we made it through those hard times. Because if your foundation and your faith are not solid, it makes it really easy to do what the normal is and to be like, I'm done. I'm done. This is too much work. It's a grind. You know, I thought, because the thing is, when you date, it's like beautiful. And like the unicorns with all the glittery sprinkles and
Hearts
all
everywhere.
the
Matt,
it's
he
the
used to
running
write
in the
these
field.
songs. I'm like, we get married now, get more songs. What's up with that? We're just like,
I mean,
Even the
it's all
coffee
like
they
the
make
running
is amazing. It's so beautiful.
the running through the fields with the I mean, no, that doesn't happen. So, the hair, like that stuff
Horses in the background.
for
I
the
can
most
paint you a
part,
picture.
for the most part, halts when you get married. And then you start bringing children to the mix, and you're like, what the heck just happened? You feel gross, you know. You don't want to. You don't want to be touched. They still.
They don't want you to touch them.
It's a hot mess of like fluctuations of things that people don't talk about. So when I was telling Dan, I'm like, and the reason I asked you, it's important in your stage to surround yourself with the right people, because one of the things I said to Dan, it was like, when we first moved out here and we had issues with certain friends that we were hanging out with, the dynamic of our marriage was so different than it was now. And I honestly can see that now. When you surround yourself with the right people, or you're in a season of nurturing your family, which I feel like God's put me in that season for like 3 years now. It's been like, you don't have enough time to give to a bunch of different people.
Yeah.
These are your
that are
people.
draining
Yes.
you. Friendships that are
Yeah, and
draining
if they're
you.
draining you,
Yes.
you
On
like,
top of it.
and if they
Taking
drain
away
you,
from you.
cut them off. No, he cuts them off for you. It's the best thing.
Yes.
Like, you don't even
Yes.
have to do the pruning. Most of the
It's
time,
amazing.
you know, you're freaked out
Don't
because
run after them.
don't run
Yeah.
after them.
Let 'em go.
Absolutely not.
Mm.
So that video you said, I love it. That was so good. So, you know, we need to get a little TDJ
I have,
video.
I have the gift of goodbye.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
And you said it about 30 times.
Yes. So
Yes.
it's so great that, you know, you're saying that it's really great in your season where you are in your transition to surround yourself with the right people, because I notice even being married that when you surround yourself with the right people, it's so important in any relationship, whether it's your friends or your marriage, to really be intentional about who you allow to be in that circle, because when there's a lot of friction happening, you have to think about what you're focusing on and who you're focusing on, you know, in your
And
surroundings.
it's a learning process because you know me,
Right.
and you know what I've gone through,
Yeah.
a couple ups and downs. So you're not always doing it right.
Right.
But at the end of the day, or at the end of like a season or a moment, you have to be able to pull back and say, okay, so how is this affecting me, or what is really going on? What is
Yes.
rooted? Because I was listening to another pastor saying it's about guarding your heart, and we're so good with cleaning up the outside,
Oh yeah.
pruning and making that look so good, but it's the inside that's so dirty and that we don't get to because we're taking care of other stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah,
true.
so-
That's good.
So, Cindy, I want to hear from you because you're the wisest of the bunch when it comes to marriage.
Amen to
Okay?
that.
I
my
don't know. I
God.
think they're a lot.
Amen.
You know,
But no, I mean, and you can come into this conversation. Can we put you on the
Do you
spot?
need another
can
pillow?
Can you put the
Do you want another pillow?
Anymore.
Spotlight, spotlight, spotlight.
spotlight? Well, I want to hear from your perspective, because another thing we were discussing prior to this videos is how much social media is affecting relationships in general. And I know it's kind of like ridiculous for me to say that because you guys are on social media watching us
There's
talk
been
about
some.
relationships. But it's
That's the
about
only good thing.
overconsumption and over gratification and how you're utilizing social media. But I think there's a huge study being done right now that tells you how many divorces are responsible because of social media. Because people are rekindling romances via social media while they're married, that, you know, have been gone forever, those high school sweethearts, and they find them on Facebook and they touch base and yada yada yada. It opens up the doors for a lot of infidelity, a lot of secrecy, a lot of things that you can do with your social media.
Yeah.
So it's really important that there is that level of trust and that level of communication in any relationship that you are in, where you feel the respect and it's mutual. And but I want to hear from you because you've been married for 36 years, and the issues that I think for the most part, if we look at all of our marriages as a whole, I think we can all probably say, oh, I've been through that. That's happened. It's hard. You know, maybe not with everything, maybe in a different context, but it's also sort of similar. But you've been married for 36 years. And 36 years ago, we didn't have social media as the problem for all these, you know, lack of connection. People are constantly using their addiction to social media as their excuse to not be present in their homes. So you have to, can we hear from you as to, you've obviously gone through the ebbs and flows as all of us have, but what do you say that you got to experience 36 years ago in your marriage that was so valuable that you don't see happen now? And what do you see that's happening now that you're like, oh my gosh, if I would have just had that 26 years ago, my marriage would look so different then? You know, and just speaking to the women that are sort of in transition as well, like if you were to have an event happen in your life where you were no longer married, you know, what would be your process if that were something that were to happen? Because honestly, that is like the one thing that I think about. Like, it's not consuming my thoughts, but like, you know, our husbands are unknown. Like, you never know what can happen. and I just have such a great relationship, and I see that you and Matt do too, and like, you know, you and David do. Like, I just feel like, man, I could not do this again. Like, heck no. I've already invested 70 celebrity years into this thing. This
All
is
about them celebrity
I mean,
years.
I'm telling you, this is hard.
I mean, it's all about it.
We need to think about our celebrity marriage names, BT Dubs. I want to know what you would call, what you guys would call me if we're not Brangelina. Like Dan and Marcy, guys, get creative. I want some comments.
Darcy.
Darcy.
There you go. That was perfect. Oh my
Hashtag Darcy. Oh my God, we have
Darcy
a celebrity
alive.
name. We have a
God.
celebrity name.
Goodness.
That was good. That was really fast. I'm very
That was
impressed.
fast
That
for
was
me.
like
That was
on
really
it.
good.
This blonde is growing out.
We're getting those roots back. I dig. I dig. Okay, so I want to hear. I want to hear from you.
Okay, well, I completely forgot what you've asked me now. Darcy.
Go back. Roll
Darcy.
back.
Gosh, I was 18 when I got married, so that's really, really super young. We were pretty naive and in love, and he's 5 years older than I am, so he knew he wanted to get married. I wanted to go off to college, even though I didn't know what I wanted to do or be. But you know, I think the main thing is that we grew up together, and it doesn't really matter what age you are when you get married. You need to grow together, because I can tell you, in 36 years, we've grown different. We're different. I'm a different person than the 18-year-old that he married.
Absolutely.
He's a different person than the 23-year-old that I married. And so I think that it's important, as you grow separately and individually, that you also grow together as a couple, and realize that you know, he's been more flexible with me because I have changed a lot, and given me that grace and that love, and I guess that space to allow me to grow and become the person that God has created me to be, and always has been that cheerleader for me. And I think that is important, and honestly, probably whether he felt like it or not. So I think it's that sacrificial love,
Right. Yeah.
that unconditional love. And and saying that, I know he could probably have, you know, wanted to rip my hair out at times and just like, what the heck are you thinking right now? What are you doing? But I think that just knowing that you are going to change and you are going to grow is important to do that. We've gone through so many seasons, obviously, in the 36 years we've been married. We've gone through extreme highs, and we've gone through some times when you know, it's been extremely tough, where we've questioned, is this going to be able to continue? And I think that each time, keeping the main thing. I just keep hearing that over and over again in my head, even while all of us are talking. Just keep the main thing. What is that main thing? That's my relationship with the Lord.
Right.
And there's a lot of times when, I think I even said last week, that, you know, when I keep my relationship with the Lord and say, God, what are you doing in me? And then not pointing the fingers at him or what he's doing or what he's not doing. God tends to do something inside of my heart. And to be honest with you, it puts me in a safe place, because I have had friends that never ever thought that they would go through a separation, never thought that they would go through a divorce. And they found themselves that this wasn't a mutual decision. One person decided that they wanted to go a different way. But when they kept the main thing, they knew God was the one that was going to bring healing. God was the one that was going to bring restoration, whether it meant restoration in that marriage or whether that meant restoration in their lives.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think that that's super important. And like all of us have said already, I'm just kind of repeating what everybody said. Just really circle yourself with people that love you regardless, that are not scolding you, that are not, you know, giving. I mean, sometimes you do go for advice, and that's fine. But in on the other side, if somebody comes to us for advice, no, it's okay if they don't take our advice. We are to love them unconditionally as well, too. And one of the things that, as an older mommy, that I feel like I want to bring into this. I still do. I remember praying my daughter-in-law in. I remember holding John David when he was a baby in the middle of the night in his room. And I get emotional still to this day, but just opening up the curtain and singing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star out loud for that woman that he was, that little one, whether she was born or not, and praying over her, you know, and now I have the fruits of her being a part of our life and being my daughter-in-law, and then, you know, and praying for my other 3 children, for their spouses to come and their relationships, and just knowing how valuable that they are. I think that's so important for us to understand so we can pass it down.
Yes,
To understand that our value, no matter what decisions that we've made in the past or things that have happened to us in the past, it does not change your value in God's eyes.
Right.
And when you know what a treasure you are, you're going to wait for that right person, and that person will come. And even if that person understands your value and hormones are going crazy, you know, just being able to have that safe place where you can have that accountability, but that person is in agreement with the things that you say that you want for your life and you believe for your life, and you can do those things. It's possible.
Definitely possible.
So,
absolutely.
Good.
What was I going to say? I was going to add something to what you were saying. One of the things we had this conversation already, but I've turned into a Stephen Furtick groupie.
Yeah.
So I'm making t-shirts if you want to join the club. But you got one. But he said, I was listening to a sermon from him last week where he was talking about a breakthrough. And sometimes we're seeking a breakthrough in specific areas in our life, in our relationships, in our businesses, with our friends, you know, whatever, for a new home, whatever. And so we're always externalizing these breakthroughs. However, what really, really got to me that he said is that when we look at a breakthrough, let's say you're having a moment with a relationship. Let's say that relationship is your husband or your boyfriend or this person or whatever. Instead of saying, I need a breakthrough with my husband because he's not listening or he's doing this or he's doing that, you need to start internalizing that breakthrough and seeing where is your part and what do you need to do to create that breakthrough in your life. And instead of pointing the finger to whatever you need that breakthrough to be, start thinking about how you can change for that breakthrough to happen. And it was so to me, because in all honesty, I've been praying for a breakthrough for a year, and it has nothing to do with my marriage. But really, when I heard that message, and then he put the example as you hear these wives pray for a breakthrough because my husband is doing this and my husband is doing that and my husband is responsible for this, and you never sit down and think about, well, what are you doing to fix this, and how is your part in this, and how can you help create that breakthrough? And then focusing on God. Focus on yourself and focus on the how did you put it? The main thing. Keep the main thing. And then shift it.
Yeah.
Look at yourself
It will
in
get
the mirror.
pointed to you.
It will get pointed to you. It was so awakening for me. It was a breakthrough for the breakthrough that I've been asked to have. Thank you, Erin. Thank you. And so I wanted to talk about that verse you have, that very popular verse that I think every single church has had at a wedding.
Yes.
But it was actually one of our readings for our wedding. But it's is that 1 Corinthians 13? Okay, so 1 Corinthians 13, it's the love is patient. I'm gonna read it because it's so good. Love is patient, is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it is not rude. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no records of wrong. Does not delight in evil. Rejoices with the truth. Always protects. Always trusts. Always hopes. Always perseveres. Never fails. Holy bananas. Because if we are talking about our marriages,
just want to say,
I just
Ross.
got checked.
Just want to throw Ross in there.
I just got
Hashtag Ross.
I just got checked because
Go get yourself one.
oh my goodness, I suck at so many of those, so many times in my marriage. And it's so easy to like fall into the trap of doing the total opposite of that.
Yeah.
But oh my gosh, I think all of us needs to print that out, and we need to see that every single day, because I think if we've walked in that spirit
For so
for,
many.
for
so many
every
things.
single relationship,
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
talking about love.
Yeah.
Love is just not about that person that you were blessed to be married to, but it's about every single person that you love and you encounter. And if you live life with those very basic principles, our life would be so extremely different. Even with the first one, it's patience. It's patient. If we just
Why is that number one?
even if we applied the first one, like if we just went, like maybe it's a daily challenge. How many are there? But we started with the patience. Okay, you lose your patience 5 minutes into waking up, and your kids are awake with you. You know, there's 16 of them. We don't.
I lost count.
15, 16, 17.
Okay, but it would be a great challenge
I looked
to.
at you like,
It would have been a great challenge
bounced off.
to start implementing
Daily.
those things daily as a challenge to ourselves, just in general. But imagine if you magnify that. If you started with, I'm going to start with patience with my marriage. You know, and today my patience is focused on my marriage, and my kindness is focused on my marriage, and does not envy. I mean, that might not be particularly a common thing, but if you sat and dissected that, you might find that there are areas in your marriage where you envy. You envy the flexibility. I envy the fact that my husband gets to work from home and he can sit in the quiet house, and I am consistently distracted and he's not distracted, and he, like, that's a little bit of envy. Like, I
That's
just
annoying.
realized that right now that I envy my husband's like silence. Okay, but that's a form of
confession
envy.
time.
It's
Yes.
confession session. It does not boast. Oh, dude, I boast. Can we boast? Yeah. It's not proud. It's not. I mean, I think every single one of those we can sit down and say guilty. Hashtag guilty, but we don't keep records of wrong. So
throw it away. What'd
say
you
it
write?
all.
Gone. What was that?
What happened?
What?
I don't know. But anyways, I would love to hear also, okay, so we discussed marriage and all the little thingies with it and how it's different for everybody. Tell me how you see social media has changed the dynamic of marriage now.
Well, I mean, I think that you have to as a married person, you really have to guard yourself about who you connect with. I mean, I'm sure every single woman that's watching this and here, it's a daily thing. You know, we're getting friend requests
from creepers,
and I mean, it's ongoing, and I know my husband because he has told me, and we've seen it, and we also see the mutual friends that are on these. It's really scary, but that there are women that are friend requesting him and very seductive photos in the very beginning. And profiles, and when it says, sometimes, if you don't have mutual friends, okay, I'm just going to delete this. But when it says you have mutual friends, and you go, oh, and you click on that, just so the men out there know you can see that. We just had one yesterday. That friend requested me, a girl friend requested me, and it was very seductive pictures, and I clicked on the mutual friends because it said mutual friends, and it's two men that I know, that I personally know, that are on, and innocently they may have just clicked just a friend request and everything, but
so easy.
I think it's infiltrating, it's finding a way, it's finding a little open door to sneak in there. I know that there's a person that I worked with a couple of years ago that got reconnected on Facebook to someone that she knew a long time ago before she was married, and all these old feelings started to come out because she was struggling in her marriage. And before you knew it, it did affect her marriage. And I think we have to guard ourselves. I think we have to, in this day and age, we really have to guard ourselves. But social media, has that thing of let's connect with people. And you feel that connection, but then what's happened is if you look around where you are, you're actually sitting alone by yourself on a couch, and everybody else has gone to bed or whatever, and so it's that false sense of connection. Social media can be amazing. It can be amazing. It has so many advantages to to connect with people, to spread a message if you have a message, to get encouragement. You have a prayer request, put it out there, anything like that. But I think on the opposite side of the coin, we have to really be careful. We have to guard our time. We have to guard what we see, who we connect with. I mean, it talks we could go into a whole nother session about talking about boundaries and how to define those healthy boundaries, and doing that. So, I think that we're having an awakening. We're seeing what effects are taking on us, how we have to like that. We go and did anybody like my post, and did anybody comment, and gosh, she hasn't commented on anything I posted. I know she's seen it. Well, I'm going for it. Just all of this stuff that goes on and on. And it's so ridiculous, But if we're struggling with things like that, think about this younger generation that is getting all of their input in. And we were talking about it's like an addiction. And there's something about that draws us in. And we're seeking what is the word? We're seeking approval and satisfaction, acceptance, all of these things from that. And when we should be getting it from, number one, our Father, our Heavenly Father, God, who says who we are, who says that, I've called you, I've created you, this is what I have for you. And then the people that are closest around us, and what happens is that slowly creeps in, and we're looking for other people's approval. So I think it's a wake up call. I think that probably should be a topic that
absolutely
that we need to talk about. We could go deep into that, but it's
in a good, I think it definitely does need to be a topic we talk about, because one of the things that irks me is how people are blaming Apple for their children's addictions to the devices that they are purchasing for their children.
And
allowing them to be on there. And exactly. So anyways, that's parenting. We'll talk about that next week. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
It's not going to be that one.
So anyways, but thank you ladies so much for all your input. Nene, I love your perspective because it comes from such a pure place, and it's so great because you bring a different dynamic to the table where you're with a bunch of crazy married women, and you are doing it the right way, and setting an example for your family, for your kids, in a culture that does the complete opposite, and it condones that, and it celebrates that, and it just makes it easy to be wishy-washy and what is that word? Not really true to your ideals. And you don't do that. You do the complete opposite. So it's really great to be watching your journey for the last 2 years and seeing how you are just, and you walk the walk. So it's really, really cool.
Strength in this one. She's got it.
Yeah, she does.
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
That you gave me.
There you go. So I hope this was helpful to you guys, and you guys can utilize any of the conversations we had about marriage, and how it's not peaches and roses and unicorns and rainbows all the time. But I would not for the field of the daisies, not all the time. But it's still so worth it and so amazing, and I honestly don't think I would have the energy for something, if my marriage ended, for something new with someone else, because I know that it's a grind. A marriage is a grind, and it's two people that are most likely completely different, and it's loving each other through the hard and the good and the tough, and trying to follow those ideals that are in the most magnificent book that was ever written. And it's hard. It's really hard, but at the same time, it's so worth it when you do it the right way. Like Erin talked about, how you guys have both talked about, and how I've learned that when you start transforming your marriage and your relationships towards a faith-based, relationship, it's completely different. So thank you ladies for tuning in, and dudes, if you're on here, we appreciate you and love you, and we'll catch you next Tuesday at 12 p.m. Bye.